Welcome back to a special edition of the IT in the D Show, broadcasting live from the CXO Exchange right here in the Madison Lofts in beautiful downtown Detroit, Michigan. I'm your host, Bob Oldenspiel, hanging out with Brian Schneble with 14 nicknames, the Schneebs. That's the you got him angry. You got him
14 nicknames.
The one.
Schneebs.
We got him.
We'll no,
we had peak Brian last episode. He got really angry. I don't even remember what you were angry about, but it was we want to harness that for this episode because we are joined by none other than Bjorn Olsen with Polera, and we have Henry Sampson from Palo Alto. Pan. Do they still call it Pan?
Oh yeah.
All right. I was gonna say I thought that was old school. We're not going to be talking. We're not allowed to say agentic anymore. I think AI. We're going to keep that to a minimum. I think we can't say guardrails is off the table. But Bjorn brought up a good thing, and one of the things I'm always I've been in technology sales, and I've always been focused on what problems are we solving here. I wanted to make T-shirts for this event. Nobody gives a shit about your green blinking lights, and I think this should be the
that's because of the holiday season,
right? It's like green and red blinking lights. But I guess Bjorn, I think you're kind of molded into the same line where you're we're using technology, but what customer problems are we solving? So I guess when you're sitting in front of somebody first time for the 100th time, talk to me about the conversations you're having.
Yeah, I think at a high level, there's really two conversations that I'm having now. It's a little dependent on the industry. There's a ton of automotive around here, manufacturing. I think some of their conversations are just a little different. But I'd say I'm having two conversations lately. The first conversation is they now have all of these tools that people like you and you and you, and for your listeners, I'm pointing at all of us, tools that we've sold them for the last 20 years. They have all these tools and they're not using them. And that's a big problem. And they can't hire people because they're not allowed to hire a bunch of people.
Isn't that software in general?
It's software in general, but this is where I live. And so they end up with this tool sprawl and not solving the same problems that we were trying to solve 20 years ago. Where's your data? What do you do with all of these alerts? And how do you patch? And how do you do that?
Who has access to what?
Yep. The other problem is a copy and paste of the exact same conversations I feel like I had 15 or 20 years ago with where's my data? Who has access to it? How's it leaving? And I think to myself, I thought we solved that 15 or 20 years ago and we didn't. We tried. But I think data protection is something that keeps coming up because we went after data protection. And I think most of the industry agrees we didn't do it the right way. We had tools. We had people.
When you say we didn't do it the right way, is that because we didn't really even understand where our data was in the first place? And what I mean by that is you said manufacturing, right? So pick a new manufacturing plant when it goes in. They build this huge footprint, but they built one assembly line in first. And all the asset tags show up and they're like, yeah, we're going to put those on next week. And they put them in a drawer. But then there's things you got to fix on the line. Before you know it, the second line comes in, all those asset tags go into the same drawer. And then the third one, by the time this plant is up and just humming, you got a drawer filled with asset tags. And if the customer said, hey, we want to come walk through whatever line, we want to look at these 20 assets, right? And you reach out to the planner like, hey, they want to come look at these 20 assets. So like, oh, great. We have no clue where those at. It's like, what do you mean? Did you put the tags on the tools? No, they're in a desk drawer. It's like, well, why are they in a desk drawer, right? It's like, so the whole data protection thing was like, well, we have these on-prem servers, right? We're just going to figure out how to make sure this data doesn't go out. But when you look at the complexities, right, from what data actually can go out, like people have tried solving like the 16 different ways somebody gets in through email instead of the 4 or 5 things that actually happen once you get in, right? So, because if that person can still get in, what are like the top 1 or 2 things they do, right? And one of the first things they do is changing email rules so that email can go out little by little from data stores. It's like, I think that would have been a good one to solve.
I think the data sprawl is only half the problem. So yes, to what you said, the data sprawl. But I think we've even made progress on finding your data But I'm talking specifically about saying, now that you know where your data is, now writing the policy to see what's happening with the data as it moves around. But I'm really talking about that last piece is when data leaves the organization. So long story short, I think we've done okay in the first identify where it is, know what it is, but to actually enforce those policies, I think we've come up short. So what we end up with is, Bob, don't turn that rule on, because if you do, you're going to break a ton of stuff. So just monitor and alert, and that's reactive. And so I think that's the biggest problem, is in our inability to enforce based on all of this goodness, the discovery, the classification, the identification.
So let's look at it through your lens, because, Bjorn's looking at it through a consultant's angle. Mm-hmm. You're looking at it through a vendor angle. Mm-hmm. You're trying to solve problems, but you also need to sell product. How do you, and the customer kind of doesn't care about your green blinking lights either. He wants to solve a problem. I guess, how do you juggle, I guess, that fine line with, we need to push revenue for this, massive company, and then we also need to solve problems, and we need to do it tactfully. I guess, does one follow the other, or like without pushing? I guess walk me through like how you look at a customer problem and how it relates to, I guess, what Palo can offer.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I do find that in the vast majority of my conversations, I am thinking strictly about what would be best for the client. But of course, there is a component I am paid. Mm-hmm. It's not a large part of my salary, but a part of it is on sales, right? But when it comes to helping the customer, you always need to focus on what exactly will make their lives more efficient and make things easier. And in that way, it's mutually beneficial.
Fair. So look, in my security days, I came up with my own methodology, and I want you to review it or tell me I'm stupid. Okay. I said,
you can say that. You can say, no, that's too
poor. Everybody else does.
Well, exactly. Most technology products either can save or make you money, right? They're either productivity tools or they're cost savers. Security is different. Security is like selling insurance. I said there's 3 pillars, basically. You just got breached. You need to check a box for a compliance, or it's based on your level of
don't say appetite.
No, sophistication. I was going to say paranoia, one of the two. But like it's securing a house. You can have a pit bull, and you can have storm windows, and you can have a gun under every table, right? But do you need it, right? And just curious as to, like, in terms of...
And for those watching the video, we just saw what Bjorn said. No, keep going.
What did he say? That was crazy?
No, you went through the different levels, the pit bull, et cetera, and then said gun under every table.
Yeah.
And Bjorn was like...
We're all at a table.
Yeah. There's nothing under this one. But just curious is like, that was an older... That was 10 years ago when I came up with, and I'm just curious, is like, as things have changed, is it still the same, or is it like in terms of your methodology and how you sell security today?
Yeah, the methodology is certainly similar, but the thing is, very few people, when they're looking at a price like that, very few people can quantify the value of the breach itself. So when you frame it in the perspective of how much the breach
I hated that number, by the way, that they're all, it's so brutal.
It is. It always is. But when you look at the likelihood of a breach,
$10 a second.
When you look at the likelihood of a breach versus the cost of what you are putting in place to prevent it, and the cost of course, maintaining that, it becomes a lot more manageable.
But if you look at IP, there's no price to IP. If you are a global brand, that was one of the conversations I had with a CISO of a motorcycle manufacturer based out of Milwaukee that I can't name. That basically said, if my IP gets out, we're done as a 150-year-old like global brand. We're done.
Exactly.
But you can't put a price on that.
Mm-hmm. So tying that back into, I'll go to automotive. I always found it amazing talking to different vendors when they're like, well, do you know what the cost of a breach is? Right? And I'm like, no, tell me, what is the cost of a breach? Right? And then they would tell me, I'm like, but what does that equate to for this automotive company, for this supplier, for this? They're like, well, I mean, that's the average cost. I'm like, no. In production, right? Like, pick an industry. And this is where it's like, boots on the ground, like you could hire 100, 200, 500, 2,000 SMB reps, and they're never going to spend the time to try to get to know their customer that intimate, right? But you can look at verticals and have a good understanding in manufacturing, specifically automotive, right? Because we're in a pull, not push method, right? That's the Kanban method.
Yeah.
So you no longer build inventory so that you have 10 days on hand. You only have 1.5 days on hand. And that allows you to reduce the footprint of inventory, which saves money, allows you, and one of the reasons Tesla struggled in the early years to get production ramped up. The only way to get production ramped up more is they have more space to produce your assembly, which means you need more outsourced sub-assemblies. And if you don't have enough suppliers to do the sub-assemblies, you got to take on more assembly, but you don't have enough manufacturing footprint, so you're setting tents up in the yard. Sounds great. So what happens then when, say, and by the way, for those watching, I'm holding up a popcorn cup. We're going to call this widget A, right?
What's a widget?
Okay, Bobby, we're going to call this sunroof A. Sunroof A goes down, right? We have a day and a half of inventory. Do we tell the customer now that the sunroof line is down? Well, it looks like a small fix. Okay, maybe we just wait. Do we tell the customer the sunroof line went down because this machine blew up and broke? And while we have a replacement tool, we don't have a machine and we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks. That's a big impact. We're going to have to...
Well, what's the cost of it?
To get one?
No. Well, like, again, you said, wait,
So that's the big... So this is where I'm going.
But the orders are just backed up. You didn't really lose any revenue. It's just time.
Orders are backed up. But what happens then when you can't ship sunroofs and then, say, Ford shuts down? Because they can't build.
They're charging you by the hour, by the day, of your stopped assembly.
So then they look at it and they say, okay, we're going to just start building every vehicle without a sunroof until you can get that sunroof put back in. But where do they make their profit? From options, right? The cell phone itself, the idea of accessorizing the accessory, I got a sticky thing on the thing that wraps around my phone. And this guy was probably like $25. That's the profit.
$25 for that?
No, I'm kidding. Somebody else paid $25 for it. God, Bobby, that's not the point. The point is, at some point, they say the cost to this is like $1 million a day or $500,000 an hour, right? They tell you what the math is. And if you know automotive, then you know that. So if you're selling into automotive, that's a conversation, right? Of what does it mean to be like, what are the systems that would actually bring you down? First, it's your equipment. If equipment breaks, that goes down. If it's an ordering system and we can't get that up, you might be able to survive manually, but only so long with still managing all of your inventories. And you would have to practice that plan quite a bit. That's business continuity, right? So where am I going with this? It's solving problems, right, for customers and understanding truly what is the impact. When someone says, do you know the cost of a breach? Well, it could be very different. It could mean different things for different industries. And understanding what that is very important. That's why you have advisors or people that work, right, for companies that create products, right? But to also understand the industries you talk to. It's very important to understand what
one of my customers, tier 1 automotive like that, they're Fortune 200, so they're a little bigger than some of the others around here. And I'll never forget what the CIO said to me one day. He's like, Bjorn, how's your conversations with, these other, his lieutenants going? I'm like, okay, here's how they're going. He said, Bjorn, for every conversation you're having, you need to be able to tell me how that conversation will keep my lines running, because that's the only thing I care about. And then he dropped the mic. And that's the lesson.
Yeah. What is your business? And if your business is creating this part and selling this part is what makes your business money, the throughput in keeping this line running all the time. When you're in the excavation business, right? What would impact a company that owns 25 dozers, 30 excavators, right, et cetera, right? What would impact them? What impacts them is that piece of equipment needs to be moving all the time, meaning in production. Well, it's in transit somewhere else, they're losing money. It's a massive capital investment. The only time it's making money is when it's on a job site and getting paid to dig, right? So it's like, well, a breach would have shut that down. Well, what a breach could do is keep it from being transported from this location to this location because they have no way to set up those orders, everything else to understand where it needs to go. And the capital investment involved in buying this heavy, massive machinery, like these are the little things that people don't think about, like in each industry, like what matters most to them. And keeping this thing moving all the time and digging is the most important thing to them. It's the only thing they give a shit about, right? So coming in and being like, well, you should be very concerned with this blinking green light. Why? It's like, no, I don't really give a shit, right? All I care about is this big excavator out there putting big holes in the ground. That's what I want to
We
do.
talked about that earlier when he said like, hey, I need a new call center. And certain salesperson would say, cool, and take an order. Another one would say, well, why? And then he gets down to then like, well, who's asking for this? And then finding out, oh, we got a bad CX score, and then or customer experience score, and then why is that? Oh, it's not even the technology; it's a people thing. So like getting down, yeah.
Ask why 5 times. Japanese saying, you get to the root cause of all things. So I throw that one out there. I'm a big fan of old Japanese proverbs.
I didn't know that was Japanese.
I thought it was Sandler.
It was 5 years. Oh, don't you dare do that to me. He just learned about this today.
It's agentic.
It's God, you guys know derail this whole thing.
I just did it.
I'm trying to tee up our friend at Palo here, and you guys are just absolutely my blood pressure. Did you see is my face red right now? Bring up
Your nose is.
Yeah. Not even drinking.
No, but it's funny you were talking about that. And you're right. There are a lot of salespeople who would go out and the client would request something very specific, and they just say, okay, and write it down.
It's hard
push through a sale. It is hard not to, sure. That's why my sales guy usually brings me in, is to figure out if they need it, if that thing is the thing that they actually need, because it will cause them so many problems right down the road if they're buying the wrong thing or buying the right thing for the wrong reason, or they don't know how to implement it. So just making sure that they're fully prepared is one of the main things that I'm working on.
So that's we talk layered security all the time.
Mhm.
There's no one tool that's going to fix everything,
Right.
and it's literally the never ending onion. I guess from a security practitioner, and maybe this is Bjorn too, but like when do you say stop? Because oh no, we're good. Because again, this is a never ending hamster wheel of security, where it's like, well, you're not looking over there, and we have this tool that can look, here's another layer of the onion. I guess, I know you can't say stop ever, but like when are things okay? Are you just, customer says I got a budget and you're just trying to fill it, or what, because again, I'm going back to like deriving business value,
Right.
or mitigating loss, right? Which is what security kind of.
I can use one really good example for you.
Sure.
Every time my mother comes over and has dinner with the family, right, and she looks at these problems, and we go to bring the salad out, right, and I just toss the metal tongs inside there, and she's like, "Oh, we can't have the metal tongs. Don't you have a salad grabber?" Right, and I'm like, "No, like the metal tongs were the best, Mom, and like especially the cheap ones,
Mhm.
right, that have the, no, you got to get a proper salad grabber, right?" And next thing I know, for like my birthday, I'm getting like this wooden salad grabber that doesn't work. It's flat on both sides. I can say all this because my mom doesn't listen to the podcast. And it just takes up space in the drawer too, because it doesn't fold down, right? But you open it up and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful salad grabber. You're gonna love that. That's perfect." It's like, but really? Was it perfect? Like I didn't really think I had a problem with my salad grabber, right? I actually like the little metal tongs. They work. Right?
Yeah, and then you never use it. It stays in a drawer for 5 years.
I'm afraid to get rid of it because if I do, and she comes over, it's like, "Where's the salad grabber?" It's like, "Oh, we just used it last night. It's in the dishwasher." "No, it can't be in the dishwasher. It's wood." I didn't mean that. It's I left it at the neighbors because they loved the salad grabber. Like, You need to go get it right now. It's like, I'm never going to be able to get it because it's in a landfill. Mom, I lied to you. I love you.
Yeah. No, good point. You're right. And you said it yourself. It's all about first seeing if you can solve the problem with the tools you already have. So instead of going out and buying that new wooden salad grabber, it's, are you satisfied with that other one that you already had? Is it useful? And do you have the skills required to use it? Which doesn't really fit that analogy.
But if the new salad grabber saved you 14 seconds every time you got salad, and you didn't lose 2 tomatoes, right?
100%.
Like no one trained you how to use the new salad grabber.
But if somebody
they
said,
just handed it to you.
hey, I apologize, we shouldn't have called it a salad grabber. Did you know that you can also use this for grilling? By the
So
way,
I think
flip it
those
around
are-
this way, you can scrape the grades. Did you know it can do like, Mom, if you would have bought me one that did more than one thing, right? And I guess that's where I was going.
The
It's like,
Ginsu salad grabber.
it's like asking the questions of what other problems you have, right? Like you might have this one problem, but you technically already own this other solution, or you technically have a process put in place. And while that may be painful, to get a single threaded solution might not work. Let's talk about some of the other things you do, right? And that's that, building understanding.
So I really like what he said about can you do it with something you already have? But I want to go back and re-ask the question, when is enough, right? Because you could just solve for everything.
Yeah.
So here's what I hear from my customers. One, if there's compliance requirements, then you have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You just have to do
Number
it.
2, you got to check a box.
Yep, check a box. The next one I would say is a little bit more about the maturity in your organization and its ability to define what is needed. And part of that, and I think this is a big point, and I hear this from my customers, like Bjorn, I don't want to be any better or much better than my peer, and I don't want to be worse than my peer. I just want to be right around where they are, maybe just a hair further. This is in terms of cybersecurity, not delivering better widgets. And so when you look at it, let's go ahead and keep picking on where I spend most of my time in the automotive. Frankly, they're nowhere near where banks are. Everybody can agree to that. They don't have to be.
Regulations.
So
Totally different.
I promise you that none of my automotive customers have any desire to keep moving to look and feel like a bank. And so I think that's part of it is understanding the industry and their peers. They don't want to be light years ahead of them because they're not going to be able to afford all the goodness that comes from across the table if they try to look like a bank.
I could not agree more. Like at the end of the day, if it was cheaper to hire 3 people just to come in and do tape backups, just to guarantee we have tape backups, right? Versus, yep, you've sold me every single disaster recovery solution I could put in. This one does that. That one's super cute. I love the woo. But at the end of the day,
those LTO 40s though were hot. I'm just saying.
They were.
like at the end of the day, what does he care about? Just keeping production going.
The van that picks them up. Hey, remember the vans that would pick them up?
Yes.
And then you would see a van going down the road. You're like, there's backups in that truck. And if it crashes, a bunch of businesses are not going to have their backups. That's going through my head.
For 2 years of my life.
For decades.
Yeah, I see. I was looking at like the things that showed up to the bank, right? That they're bringing bags of coins out, right? You're like, that guy's a techie. He's got backups. Let's go.
So for 2 years of my life, I flew to Denver every 2 weeks and went to Storage Tech Drive where there was like 17 storage vendors there and tried to sell tape autoloader OEM backups.
I love it.
Oh, man.
And it was, I got one out of them. That's the one deal I went to Tokyo with.
Just so you know, like I just talked to somebody the other day that is reverting back to tapes.
Seriously?
It's very specific to the business that they're in. He's like, I need a bulletproof way, right, to show that no matter what, for all these clients, that if you want to be on tape, like
Tell him I got some 2400 baud modems for sale if he wants.
I was just saying, and I said, I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, like you have a guarantee, right? Like,
Well, what's the difference between that and backing up to Zerto on site? I know people that are doing that today. I'm like, wait, you're doing what? Like, there's no difference.
yeah, yes and no. I'm not going to get into the nuance because I don't want to beat
Might
someone
as well
up.
put your stuff in the salt mine in Grand Rapids for crying out loud. Is that still open?
I don't know if the salt mine is,
I remember those.
Yeah.
but you were talking automotive, right? And you were talking salt mines.
Yeah.
I think it's outside of St. Louis. Most people don't even know this. One of the biggest aftermarket assemblies for Ford Motor Company is inside this old abandoned cave/mine. And it was, when they first discovered it, they used it to store cars. I forget when this was. This was like 50s or 60s.
They just went there for Emo's Pizza, I think.
Well, they stored it down there because of temperature, everything else, but they didn't want it exposed in terms of people could see how many cars weren't sold, right? It was one of those.
What?
And then they could also store it down there and keep them safe. And then what became of it was, hey, we got this whole area that we can put cars in and then work on the aftermarket stuff. So if you needed something added, it's like several layers inside this cave. I keep backing up as I get excited about this. Anyhow, you said
Fantastic.
automotive, you said cars, right? Just throwing it out there.
You know what? I'm proud we didn't talk AI. We did not talk.
We didn't
Yeah,
use the
zero trust. We didn't talk.
AGENT. I said,
we
no,
don't-
I did. I said agentic once, didn't I?
Not in proper context though.
I didn't say guardrail.
It was in humor.
Yeah, total humor.
Indeed.
And also, for those that were listening, if there was a little munch sound, there is this amazing freshly popped popcorn here, different flavor. What did you say it was?
Like Garrett's, kind of like Chicago mix.
Oh yeah.
While we're wrapping up, Bjorn, I'm just curious to get like a wrap up. Like, we kind of hit the crux of, deriving business value from security. And again, this is one of the head scratchers of the century if you're in IT. I guess what do you leave, like when you do a leave behind, like hey, you think about this, think about something, think about this before you leave. Like what's that one bomb you drop before you walk out?
It's the same question I think all of my customers are asking. And I hate that I'm saying it and it sounds a little stereotypical, but to do less with more, I feel like my customers have less money than they ever have. And cyber costs more as a percentage of business.
Yeah.
And so the demand to do less with more, it's not just a fun tagline like it was when we were in our 30s, when we were his age.
Yeah.
Now,
I remember my first beer too.
right. Now, doing less with more is absolutely critical.
If you just to touch on that, if you go back, like if you look at this as like a golf bag, and when we first started, there was 9 clubs in that golf bag, and you look at it today, there's 80. Like if you look
You
at
need
what
your 40 degrees, your 47 degrees, your 49 degrees.
putters, right?
Mhm.
It's
I have 3 different angles of pitching wedges.
I'm still that automotive golfer. I'm trying to do more.
You have
with
only
less.
9 clubs?
I think I only use
9 clubs?
And I have to borrow someone's driver recently, like for the last 6
yours.
rounds. I snapped on a drive back. I was like, I'm fine. I have 0 woods in it. Why? Because I hit my woods bad.
I don't have any woods.
My club is my 4-iron, a borrowed driver. I got a handful of like maybe 4 other irons.
So
a
use
putter.
little tape backups.
I have something called
Yeah.
a sand wedge. You don't use it in the sand. You use it if a pitching wedge isn't exactly right.
See,
The
I
sand wedge.
don't even have a sand wedge anymore. So I have one of those, what do you call it? I think it's a 52 or 53. So I use that in sand and just turn it a little bit more, right? You just got to angle it a little bit
angle
more
it
that way.
Open up your wrist.
with less.
Doing more with less. Like, what are your thoughts on doing more with less, and how, from a Pello perception too, what Bjorn just said in terms of customers, especially in the Michigan area, when you think manufacturing, are being required to do more with less. Volumes are down, right? Like overall volumes, which means if your customer isn't GM, Ford, and Chrysler, yeah, their volumes are slightly down. But if your customers are OE tier 1s, and I'm saying this for the world to understand, those in tech, automotive suppliers make 5% or less total profit, right? The profit margins are slim. And everything they've quoted to their customers, there is no going back and re-quoting, and those are 5-year, 7-year contracts. And they're quoted based on a massive capital investment, right? Pello is one of the few that actually does make capital investment because you actually have the production of a finished good, right? But it's nowhere near what an automotive company does. It's all capital investment.
Right.
So your volumes, because that thing's only going to last 5 years, and you have to have an ROI in 2 to 3 years, because every major model then turns over every 5 years. Why? Because consumers think they need another cute car, a little more rounded on the edges, dude, right? So what ends up happening is that the profit levels, the second you quoted something at 30,000 vehicles per month, and that drops to 28,000, then 27, and then 25, within 6 months, you are now so in the red until that volume comes back or goes higher. And people are like, and I hear this from other tech companies, they're like, yeah, but they're still making cars, so they're making money. I'm like, thank God, you don't understand what capital investment is.
You don't understand supply chain either.
Right? I'm like, once you give someone this $5 million, right, and you take that money, right, you have to get a return on it. And the longer that return goes out, the less money you end up making, to the point where now, man, we amortize this equipment to be paid off in the first 2.5 years. We may never get to that till year 4. We may only make money for 1 year. Do you think, like, and I look at tech companies, do you think when tech companies are out there showing, look at, like, I'm going to throw it out there, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, all of them, like CrowdStrike, George Kurtz was just on there. Look at this, free cash flow. Look at this. Like, when did it become fucking cool to be out there like, when the rest of the world
40% every year, 40 to 50% year over year, CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
More money,
But
more profit.
But your customers are the ones that make finished goods, right?
After they
So where I'm going with that is, like, how do you navigate that, right? And like, it's got to be tough, right? Because you're navigating complexities with more data, more controls supposedly needed, right? It's a lot easier working with some of the biggest banks who have heavy regulation, and that's just the requirement, versus some of the manufacturing companies. And I'm asking specifically because we're here in Michigan.
Of course.
Yeah. How do you navigate that, right? In both thought, contrast, and the identity of who Palo is?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah. I know. So loaded.
No, you're fine. So in how it specifically relates to automotive companies, I've been in a lot of meetings where an automotive company might think of a firewall the same way they think of the conveyor belts that they bought 30 years ago. You know, they still work, so we don't need to replace them.
I mean, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but you do know, like, throughput's important. So, like, a conveyor belt that's made, you're only getting 5 parts out a minute. You could be getting 100 parts out per minute.
Exactly.
There are differences in firewalls.
Exactly. And then not to mention with the trends, with things changing, people using, I'm not going to say the word, but people using certain sites more recently, the needs on those devices have changed. So it's not necessarily a question of how long can you squeeze out of a particular firewall or other device that you're using. Is that device going to be the most efficient thing possible at that particular moment? So what I'm seeing as a trend is in the next 3 to 12 years or so, generally analysts kind of expect quantum computing to get to a point where it can be used for hacking purposes by nation states. So being able to have a device with sufficient throughput, like sufficient capacity to handle post-quantum cryptography, being able to encrypt and decrypt things that will fool those computers will be very important in the next few years. Does that make sense? So just being able to articulate those things and prepare in advance. Because it's always cheaper to do things proactively than reactively.
I 100% agree.
Well, I mean, every security company's been reactive. Hacker comes out with a new exploit, then they fix it 0 day. You know what I mean? This has been the theme since we've been kids.
But it is the theme of automotive, because, like, you could put together a plan for a $3 million assembly line. They say no, and you got to take out all these controls for quality with that camera systems. And then a year later, when you're in production, all of a sudden you have some quality issue that shuts down GM. And now it's like, oh crap, now we got to be reactive. Like, we got to go out and buy all these camera systems and put them in, and we got to check every part 100 times and tune this, right? And it's like, yeah, but these are the same ones we were going to put in originally, but we couldn't get budget for. And now all of a sudden we have budget. Well, yeah, because we just shut down the customer. Mm-hmm. So it's to your point, like getting ready for when we talk about the PQC, right?
Yeah.
The quantum, what I'll call cliff that's coming, right? This just isn't about your internal systems or hardware or externals, your supply chains, about all.
See, I'm expecting full time travel when quantum computing comes out, so I'm not even worried so much about breaches and hacks and everything.
Oh, because we can go back.
Yeah.
I'm
going to go straight back to the 80s and just like,
Oh,
I love the 80s. I love the 80s.
Baseball.
You should have seen this picture of him from the 80s doing karaoke in Japan.
It was like 2008.
God, you look so young.
So that happens when you have 3 daughters and you drink 18 gallons of beer a day.
Good, I'll let you wrap up. And
for
the record, it's not 18 gallons of beer. It's more like 16.5.
Fine. European standard. No, but he brings up a good point. Like, this will be like one of the first times we're trying to get ahead of where things are going, because it's always been reactive. Security's always looked at. They've always tried to, like we talked about in an earlier segment, if a hacker's good enough, they're going to get hired by one of these companies.
For sure.
And with quantum coming out, like this is going to be the first time we're like, well, and the problem is if you're 1 degree off, it's almost, you could be light years away.
Exactly.
If you miss where it's going. So like this is going to be a huge gamble, and none of us are going to know where this is going to be. So again, I think you're stuck being reactive. It's the nature of this because we don't know.
Well, that's an interesting point. But the thing is, I think the right way to think of it is less of the first time this thing is going to be happening. And it's more of an engineering problem like any other, like how Y2K was an engineering problem, how going from HTTP to HTTPS was an engineering problem. It's just another step of that, but it is worth being prepared for it before it takes down your environment.
Yeah. All right, cool. Awesome conversation. We could probably sit here all night and argue. Brian could, I know that. But we're going to wrap things up. Appreciate Bjorn from Polera. I'll never get used to
Polera, CBI forever.
CBI for hashtag CBI forever. The number 4, not FOR. And Henry, I'll keep wanting to call you Harry, from Palo Alto. Appreciate the time and the insight. Look forward to having you back. But hey, we're going to wrap things up for this episode of the IT and the D Show. On behalf of Bob and Brian, do us all a favor, drink up your drinks, get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.